there's also a larger sort of like philosophical question that I've been wrestling with, which is if we do, so anyone that hasn't watched the last Elon All Hands on Tesla, like he literally lays out the future. Like if you haven't read the Tesla master plans, he keeps updating them. Like that man has laid out everything consistently 4 years, continues to hit it. And it's like the whole story is solar, storage, EVs, a radical abundance. You can have whatever you want. And I believe he's going to deliver because he's delivered everything he said so far. Now, and by the way, I didn't even know they're doing crazy stuff like now, in addition to like they build their own batteries. They're like actually freaking mining and refining. I don't know if they're mining it, but they're refining the lithium like themselves. You know, it's crazy how deep in the weeds they are. So one thing though that I kind of think he misses and most of us miss is in that world where we can really have radical abundance, anything we want, is that a good thing, right? I also think about like, you know, the kind of like animation stories where people are like basically obese and just like sitting there like strapped into like the Zuck, whatever, like digital world, like slurping on a cola and like, I don't know. I mean, that's a much deeper topic, but
I think that comes with assumptions that we don't change that much. Like there might be like maybe these, you know, the GLP drugs that everybody's into, maybe that vision of the future actually gets mediated by better tools and ways.
Good, but I think there's probably still a massive unlock and maybe some of the stuff we're talking about with vibe coding or whatever can help it, which is to help empower people to know that creative potential is unlimited and you can literally do whatever you want. The question is, the hard question then is discipline and what do you want to do? This is like also Chris Pike line that he said a couple of times. VC, I think is pretty sharp, which is the problem when we had, you know, unlimited education on the internet. It wasn't like, oh, now MIT is open to everyone. Like everyone's going to be a great mechanical engineer. It's just like, no, it's like the will, motivation, desire. I think those become, frankly, the most scarce attributes in the next century.
Well, what's interesting about what you just said, we may be at a point where people can do anything or they have any choice, but the doomers say that AI is going to make it so that we can do nothing, or like it's pointless to do anything because AI will do everything for you. So is it, which is it?
I think it could
do future humans like have nothing to do or everything to do?
I mean, we can ride our mountain bikes if we want, right? That was fun. Like we could do that, but we could also contribute to trying to make Lightning or Nostr better. Like we can do that if we want. It's like you have options. You can do whatever. You don't have to go make widgets in a factory. And like we kind of already intuit that you don't have to make widgets in a factory, but we don't intuit that you don't have to necessarily show up in a certain way in the world. Like it is a boundless expanse of creativity, and you can contribute in lots of different ways, in ways that you want, that you feel valued. It doesn't have to be the one thing, you know?
But it requires a tremendous amount of unlearning, right? Because, and frankly, I think, you know, I don't have a kid, but if I did, I think I would probably like encourage them to, this is a little bit far field for the show, but get into meditation or something early just so they can start to hear their own inner voice. Yeah. Because the reality is like, if you shove, you know, all of us, like we went through a school system where it was like, hey man, like you're here at 9, you like sit down and shut up because the teacher's going to be, you know, whatever, drawing some figures on the board. It's hard to unlearn all of that. So my hope is, I think this could go very dystopian, very utopian. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle. It's like some people are, you know, able to take advantage of these opportunities, and you know, maybe some end up in Zuck's metaverse.
I think there's one phrase that I always repeat in my head that I kind of like discovered maybe decades ago, but did not recognize when I was younger, which is there is not one right way.
Correct.
And I think when you feel like there is a right way, I would always ask the question, like, why do you think that that's the right way? Who told you that's the right way? Who told you have to do that? Because there's not one right way. For almost anything. There's not one right way to have a relationship with somebody. There's not one right way to make a podcast.
Find a job.
Yeah.
I mean, the best jobs, as you said yourself, like, how'd you get your job? You created it.
He created it. Then the job showed up later, you know?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like literally, yeah, right? And you know, like you guys know my wife. She kind of has been struggling to make a bunch of things and help people, but she didn't know really like what kind of job is it. Now it's turned into like this amazing thing. It's like flourishing for her, but there's not like one right way to do it. And I point to, you know, Steve's kind of creative approach as that. But I think that's also what I would point out in this. Like, is it utopian? Is it dystopian? It's like, there's not one right way. Yeah, when we say things like education, we think about sitting in a classroom. We're like, oh, that's old. You don't need to do that anymore. But then we try to put it on YouTube and we're like, oh, this is the future of education. And I think I was sharing with Steve, I think the future of education, I went on DeepSeek, and if you do the reasoning model and you have it do the thinking and you have it explain its thinking, I was like, this is how you educate a young human to think. Because it's asking, what does the person who's asking me this want to understand? Well, I know this and I know that. These are my assumptions. These are the facts I know in the world. And it walks through all of that in the thinking phase. And then it comes to the phase where it says, okay, here's the answer.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's showing your work. I think this is like the greatest tool for education that the world has ever seen. Nobody talks about it like it's an education tool. Everybody's like, oh, this is like part of this innovative AI future.
Productivity.
Yeah. Which it is. Like, peace on that. I'm not against that future. But I also think if you want to figure out how do you educate a young human, let's show how to think. Let's show your work
Agreed.
on these machines.
Maybe walk through. You had a specific example about a small airport, right?
Do you want to tell what you?
Well, I forget your exact prompt, but David and I went indoor rock climbing in this past week, and I pointed out that there's actually an airstrip right next door, which you can't see because of a fence. Yeah, up in San Rafael.
Oh.
So I discovered this because one day I was leaving, and all of a sudden there's a plane flying right. It felt like right at me, and I'm like, oh my god, but it's gonna crash. And then it landed, and then I looked at Google satellite view, and I'm like, oh, there's an airstrip right there.
Yeah.
So I think David prompted. What was your specific prompt?
I think I said something like, what kind of airplanes land at the San Rafael airport or something?
And I mean, it seems like kind of a basic question and kind of boring, but like there was like a tremendous amount of reasoning about it. And it made me think of, like, I always feel like a good interview question and then engagement with a candidate is to ask them to estimate something.
Yeah.
And then the actual answer doesn't matter. It's the process. How did they think about getting that answer?
Yep.
Is far more illustrative. And it just felt like that's what this AI was doing. And I agree. It's a great way to learn how to think.
So here, I brought it up. So what kind of airplanes land at the San Rafael airport? That was what I prompted. In the thinking phase, it thought for 47 seconds. And it said, okay, so I need to figure out what kinds of airplanes land at the San Rafael airport. Let me start by recalling what I know about the airport. San Rafael Airport. I think it's in California, right? Maybe in Marin County? I've heard of it before, but I'm not exactly sure about its size or types of planes that it uses. First, I should consider the size of the airport. If it's a smaller airport, it probably can't handle large commercial jets. Maybe it's a general aviation airport. Those usually have shorter runways and cater to smaller planes, and on and on and on. This went on. You know, I've read about like 10, 15% of it now. It went on and on. But could you imagine if you don't know how to answer, if you just like throw your hands up, I don't know. Or maybe historically you would say, oh, I'm going to look on Wikipedia. Well, now instead of just looking on Wikipedia, you can actually say, well, if you wanted to discover this information or uncover this information, what thought process would you go to do it? And you can imagine asking a scientific question and seeing how the scientific method goes, or a question that humans don't yet know, like an experiment you want to run. Yep. And you could imagine learning how it thinks about running that experiment that you might want to run. And then you could probably say, okay, run it. If it can be done in like an information world, you can probably just run it. And if it needs a wet lab or something, maybe we'll have that in some manufacturing environment, or robotic environment soon.
And you also, I saw, TK, I think you've been very good about using this. I need to figure out how to get the, use Grok on my phone. And my Wi-Fi or my cell service is so bad. I need to get a new cell service provider that I don't really use the voice thing. Despite loving technology, I'm one of the more anachronistic people I know. But one thing I thought was super cool. Actually, did two cool things. You took a picture of a tree and we figured out what it was. That was dope.
Oh, yeah.
But we've been also discussing, the potential for off-grid mining, and potentially an off-grid cloud, potentially solar powered with batteries.